Hello, my name is Jill Coyle, and welcome to another episode of No One Dies from Divorce, where we talk the nitty-gritty aspects of divorce and help each other come through this not only surviving, but thriving. I'm a divorce attorney, and I'm interviewing other experts and people just like you who are going through or have been through a divorce, so you can have the latest and greatest information on all things before, during, and after divorce. Let's dive in. Welcome to another episode of No One Dies from Divorce. You guys, I'm very excited for this special episode because this is going to be a personal story. It's going to be touching, and I think that it's going to resonate with a lot of our listeners because it is something that's so personal. So today we have Megan Sanford with me. Hi, Megan.
Hi.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks.
And Megan is a law clerk who works for Coyle Law, and we are so grateful to have her here. But her story is a little bit different, and her journey to where she is today is pretty inspirational, and so I wanted it to be shared, and she so gratefully agreed to come on and share with the world. So, Megan, thanks for being here.
Well, thank you for that introduction. Thank you for having me.
So I do want to read your bio, and then it's going to tie into a little bit of your story. So, She wants to defend families and children. So she is a recovered addict and a birth mom of 2 daughters that were placed for adoption. She's personally passionate about fighting for the best interests of children. Additionally, her undergrad background in social work and work experience as a caseworker at DCFS, combined now with her law school education, has uniquely qualified her to represent children and parents with empathy and compassion and be a powerful advocate. Born and raised in Utah, she then got her bachelor's degree in social work from the University of Utah. She has worked with many recovering addicts, birth moms, fostered and adopted kids, and others going through traumatic experiences. Wanting to further contribute to this community, she then decided to go to law school, and she graduated from the U of U, J. Quinney College of Law. When she's not studying or working, she enjoys spending time with her husband, Taylor, and their son, Phoenix, and daughter, Brooklyn. They have 2 dogs, 3 bunnies, a cat, and a bearded dragon. It sounds like a zoo. So, Megan, I'm just excited for you to be here. Megan's been law clerking for us since, October, so about 9 months.
Give or take, yeah.
And it's just been really great to get to know you. As you guys all know, I'm an advocate for inspiring women to step into their place and shine wherever they are. And Megan is an absolute example of this, of you stepping into your light, recognizing that hard things can allow you to shine brighter and help others who maybe are going through a similar fact pattern. And so I'm proud of you.
Thank you
for shining in your light. So I just want to start a little bit with your backstory. Tell the viewers a little bit about growing up and then getting to high school.
So I grew up in Utah County, Orem, Utah, and I grew up with in a family that had endless opportunities and resources. We valued religion and education. Both my parents had full-time jobs. We never wanted for nothing. I had 3 older siblings who were a lot older than me, so essentially I grew up alone. My mom was my best friend. We did everything together. I was a straight A student. I was top of my class and everything, but I also felt the need to constantly be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And developed an eating disorder when I was 12. My daughter is 12. That makes me really sad when I think about it.
I have a 13-year-old, and it's been really hard to see her all of a sudden step into this insecurity that I remember me developing and still having as a 40-year-old, this insecurity about the way I look and stuff. And
12 is just so young.
Yeah.
When I look at it, it's just far too young to even worry about that. So I developed an eating disorder at the age of 12, and kind of hid myself behind big baggy sweatshirts, and worked my butt off to just maintain a 4.0 until about high school. I never felt like I was good enough. Even though I don't blame the way my parents raised me now that I look back on it. My dad wanted me to be the best version of myself, and I just didn't see that at the time. And my mom was just my biggest cheerleader. So I felt alone. I was depressed. I never felt good enough.
Yeah.
Until it gets me to high school.
Yeah. And that's, when we live in a very religious state, and I do feel like expectations here are higher for children than anywhere else.
They're unrealistic.
I mean, like, the competitiveness of kids here in Utah is really hard. And I don't know if it's religion or if it's more just like
I think it's the culture.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the religion.
Yeah, because you see it especially now, even in non-religious homes, just the competitiveness and the pressure they put on their kids.
Yeah. An appearance of having to be perfect all the time.
Yeah, and Utah is also very known for its, healthy state. Like, there is I'm just going to say it. You look on Instagram with a lot of these influencers who are from Utah, and they look the same. They're very thin. They're very fit. They have blonde hair. They wear extensions. I mean, it's almost become kind of a meme on Instagram when you're like, scrolling through to see these Utah girls. And so, Megan sitting here has very dark hair. She's, lighter complexion. Me I was taller than every girl. I was always bigger than every girl. I always felt out of place. Did you kind of feel the same way?
Yeah, my older sister and my sister-in-law were very petite, long blonde hair. I've always had short brown hair. And my neighborhood was full of the most incredibly talented, beautiful individuals. They just could never match up to. They danced, they sung, they acted, they were just talented across the board. And I was good at school. So,
yes.
but not, that outward appearance of being good enough.
Okay, I'm going to stop you. Put your water bottle down because every touch of it is going to pick up on the audio. So, sorry.
You're good.
I just wanted to make sure. So, okay, so you get to high school, you have this, wanting to be perfect. So what happened?
So in high school, I met a boy. I had a great group of friends too. We were top of the class. We hung out all the time. I didn't have any friends until the 9th grade. And then I found this group of friends and we were super tight. And then I met this boy. And I felt like he saw me for me. He wasn't academic at all. He was kind of just floating through life. And then I got in trouble for the first time. My parents went out of town when I was really close to it was the week before I turned 16. And my dad had bought me a car for Christmas. And I took the car driving. And the second my mom walked in the house, I told her the truth. I couldn't lie to my mom. I was incapable of lying. I was a really good kid. But my dad found out from another source, and I think he was hurt that I hadn't told him as well. And it was the first time in my life that I felt like, it doesn't matter what I do, I'm never going to be good enough. And I kind of just said, screw it. At that point, I stopped going to class. I mean, the transition was overnight. I can't even describe how it happened. I went from being in all honors classes, top of my class, straight A student, to almost failing out of school. I was sneaking out at night to be with this boy. I went from never having kissed a boy to making out with him in the back of a car. I went wearing his leather jackets to school. Like, I had this, my mom told me, and I can see it now. I had this dark aura around me.
What do you think was the defining moment? The fact that you got in trouble, the fact that you knew you couldn't take it anymore? Was it more depression speaking? Like, what do you feel like was that defining moment that just told you, I'm done. I just don't want to live this persona anymore?
I've always looked at the the event of me getting in trouble as being that catalyst, but I think it was a series of things. I started dating this boy a week before my 16th birthday, and he lived this carefree life. He didn't have the stresses. He didn't care what he got, what grades he got. And he saw me, and I just really loved to be seen.
Yes.
For the first time. And feeling like, well, if I can't be good enough for my dad or this culture, I'm good enough for him by doing almost nothing. Mm-hmm. And I was exhausted at that point. I was not eating. I was not sleeping. I was killing myself trying to be enough. So, yeah, I think it was a series of things.
Okay, so you start getting in trouble, kind of just, your mom says that it was just like you had this black aura around you.
Yep.
So what happened after that?
So my parents, and I didn't understand at the time, I understand now, being a mom myself. After about let me back up a little bit. I was on and off with this boy for about a year. And we were running away together. We were spending the night together. He was essentially a drug, is what I consider him to be now. I could not stay away from him, even though I knew he was bad, even though I knew he was dragging me down. I couldn't stay away from him. And he ended up getting in trouble about 6 months after we had met and started dating. And he had to leave for a few months. And when he left, I remember diving into this despair, and I started cutting, and I wasn't able to cry. And the first time I ever tried alcohol, one of my friends gave me Everclear. Don't recommend that being your first alcoholic experience. Don't do it.
Yep.
And anyway, it was just a really dark time. Shortly thereafter, he came back. We got into the same patterns, the same habits. And finally, my mom was she didn't know what to do. And so they sent me to a wilderness camp for a couple of weeks when I was 17. For the summer before my senior year of high school. And then I went to rehab for troubled teens. Okay. For 7 months. Mm-hmm. I really dry mouth.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Yeah, just put it back down. No, you can totally drink whenever you need it. So, so we're talking about, so you go to this wilderness camp. Yeah. Did it help?
So actually, the wilderness camp, I would recommend it to almost all troubled teens. I was there for 6 weeks, and for the first 3 weeks, they put me on suicide watch because it was stupid, and I was like, well, if you're making me stay here, I'm going to kill myself. Don't do that, especially when you don't mean it. But then after the first 3 weeks, I thrived. I was the leader of the pack. I was hiking 10 miles a day. I felt better and I looked better than I had ever. I was fit. I felt good. And my self-esteem was a lot better than it had ever been. The wilderness camp was great. It taught me how to work hard. It gave me responsibility. It gave me a leadership role. It was really awesome. But then immediately following that, they sent me to a rehab for troubled teens. It was in Utah. Utah is full of them. But most of the girls I was with were all from out of state. So while I was there, I ran away twice because I'm from Utah, so I could call my friends and be like, hey, come pick me up. I gained 40 pounds because they didn't know how to treat eating disorders. But I graduated high school. I don't know if I would have graduated high school otherwise. Okay. So I was doing schoolwork while I was there, and I graduated high school the January before my 18th birthday. Okay. So I graduated early.
I want to take a pause for a second because I want to flip the script and I want to talk about, because so many times as attorneys and what we do is we get parents that just don't know what to do. Yeah. And they're just, they are in similar situations where their kids are pushing as hard as they can away from them and they just don't know what to do. So I wanted you to, do you have any advice for those parents now living as that teenager and now being a mom as yourself that you could tell them as kind of a little bit of advice?
Yeah, so when I was younger, I was a really good kid. My mom didn't have rules for me because I didn't need them. I was home before curfew needed to be implemented. I was a really good kid. But by the time the rules needed to be implemented, it was far too late. I didn't know how to follow them. I didn't know how to have boundaries. I didn't know how to have responsibility. I thought she was trying to punish me by sending me away. And looking back at it now, if my kids were going through what I was going through and I didn't know where they were at night, I didn't know what they were doing, I knew they were not going to graduate high school, I didn't know who they were hanging out with or what they were doing with those friends. When my mom sent me away, she knew I was alive. She knew that she could finally sleep at night and get a good night's sleep, knowing that I would be okay and that I would be there in the morning. And I can't resent her for that. And look where I am today. So it was a really hard time. We had a hard time, and it took me a long time to get over that. But I think my mom did a few things like that that I feel eventually saved my life, got me to where I am. As a mom, and you feel just so hopeless, I would absolutely put my kids in a wilderness program today if they were like that, knowing that at least someone was watching them full time, that they were safe, that they were getting school, and I knew who they were with.
I think that's imperative. I also have a lot of parents that just don't know what to do and they want to give up a little bit. But, I always say that it's the little things your kids remember, not the big movements. Yeah. Like the kids remember if you don't give them a birthday gift.
It's true.
But they're not going to remember like the big, you pushed me into this wilderness. It's the little things where they're at the end of the day, and I don't know, maybe you can speak from experience where you remember like, okay, my mom was doing that out of love and she never gave up on me. This wasn't her putting me in that camp, was her last resort, just like you said, to know that I was going to be okay, and that was, what she needed to do to be able to sleep.
Yeah, no, it's true. I remember the way she looked at me when I was walking out of my house. She was devastated and heartbroken and so full of love and not knowing what else to do or where else to turn.
Yeah.
I can remember that.
Yeah, tough. So you graduated high school?
I graduated high school.
And then what?
And then I moved to California for 6 months. I have to back up again. During this time when I was out of control, my mom actually applied to BYU for me. Maybe I did. I have zero recollection of applying, but I got in. I got accepted to BYU. And so prior to going to BYU, I moved to California for 6 months, kind of my last attempt at freedom, and got a job working at Disneyland.
Fun.
It was really fun. It was a great summer. I was free, away from like the Utah culture and the norms and the person I had to be, away from rules and responsibilities, learning how to follow the rules as an adult, knowing that I had to show up to work the next day so I couldn't stay out all night. It was a really good learning experience for me. However, I learned being at Disneyland that there are a lot of people who work there who are not very happy. So I met a boy while I was working at Disneyland, and he was a meth addict. And prior to this, I didn't swear. I don't watch rated R movies. I had tried alcohol once. I think I tried marijuana once or twice. I made out with a lot of boys, but overall, I still had all of like my young childhood values instilled in me. I got a tattoo on my 18th birthday that was like as rebellious as I was going to go.
Okay. It's crazy to think, though, that your parents were so nervous for you and concerned about you rebelling when you really weren't that bad.
Except that they didn't know where I was at night.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. And I was sleeping with my boyfriend at 16. So there's that.
Okay.
But other than that, and I remember telling the girls I went to rehab with who were there from drugs and all sorts of stuff, that my mom sent me there because I drank coffee. Like, I legit believed that for the longest time.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
All right.
Because I was like, I'm not a bad kid, but she didn't know I was. I was cutting, I was throwing up everything I put in my body. A lot of it was not to control me, it was more to help me.
Right. Okay. So you meet this boy at Disneyland. He's doing meth.
He's doing meth.
Worst drug out there, children.
There's two.
Okay.
There are two horrible drugs. Everything else I hear, I'm like, they'll be fine. But meth and heroin,
Okay.
don't touch.
You're right.
Yeah. It blows my mind. It's crazy to me to think that I don't watch rated R movies.
Mm-hmm.
And then I learned about this drug. And you don't eat and you don't sleep, which were like my two least favorite things in the world. And so I tried it. And I was gone. I was done. It was over for me. I felt like I was on top of the world. I had more confidence than I've ever had.
Mm.
I felt like I could conquer anything at that point. It was over at that point.
So, addicted?
It took a few months, but yeah, it was like a medical miracle at that time for me.
Mm-hmm.
It got rid of all of those demons that I had inside of me.
Depression, anxiety,
low self-esteem,
mm-hmm.
all of that.
Okay. So you get done 6 months and you come back to Utah to go to BYU?
Uh-huh.
Addicted to meth?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's talk about that.
All right. So I started at BYU. My high school boyfriend had come back into my life.
Okay.
Because we were addicted to each other. And in case you're wondering, you can't function on meth. Like, it's not possible.
Right.
So
anybody that comes to my office and says, but I'm a functioning meth addict, I'm like, no, you just haven't gotten caught yet.
Right.
When they tell me, like, my kids, nothing ever happened to my kids. You're lucky.
Yet. Yeah. It's only a matter of time. And it spirals so fast. I wasn't showing up at classes because I was sleeping through my classes because I wasn't sleeping at night. And I would pass out for 3 days. And it was insane. The chaos. When I look back on it now, to me, it's like a whirlwind of colors. It's just chaos. But I finished my first semester of BYU. I think I failed all but one class, so my mom helped me just dismiss those grades. And then I woke up in January and I was like, all right, I'm turning over a new leaf. I'm going to do well. I started attending my classes. And then I found out I was pregnant.
Okay. With your high school boyfriend?
With my high school boyfriend, yep. And I told my mom through email. Not nice. My dad didn't want anything to do with me. I hurt him really bad. And my mom was just lost. She didn't know what to do. So she worked at BYU at the time as well. So she had a lot of connections. So she withdrew me from BYU before they could kick me out. And erased all of my academic records so that it wouldn't follow me. And kind of told me that I needed to figure this out. So I moved into this little basement bedroom with my boyfriend in one of his friends' houses. It wasn't a good situation, but I was planning on keeping this child. I wanted her. Gilmore Girls was my favorite show. She was going to heal me and save me, and she was going to be the solution to all of my problems. She was going to love me unconditionally, and we were going to be a family. And I had named her. I picked out her name when I was actually in the rehab at 17. I named her Liberty, to be free from the inner demons that I was constantly battling. Okay. And so I did. I knew before I even knew she was a girl that she was my Liberty. And for 7 months, My mom helped me get into a studio apartment. My mom was very supportive either way. She wanted me to be okay. She always has.
I've met her mom. She's a very nice lady.
She's incredible. And she will say now that she enabled me far too much, which is absolutely true. I didn't know how to call and schedule a dentist appointment, but I was having a child.
Right.
Because my mom took care of me. And she would rescue me over and over and over again. I couldn't pay my bills because I was buying drugs, and she didn't want me to be homeless, as she would. Over and over and over again. She did eventually stop, but I was trying to figure this life out. I couldn't keep a job. My boyfriend couldn't keep a job.
Was he doing meth too?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I quit. As soon as I found out I was pregnant.
Okay.
I quit. Because I wanted her to be okay. So I did quit until she was born. And for 7 months, I was planning on being her mom. We were going to have a family. Single moms figure it out all the time, right? Like, I was going to figure it out.
Yeah.
But at around 7 months, and I gained a ton of weight. I was finally allowed to eat whatever the hell I wanted. I gained 20 pounds in the first month. It was really bad. And so around 7 months, I started thinking of what was going to happen after I had her, and calling my dealers and stocking up and trying to have some on hand so that I could lose the baby weight right after. And I remember I was working at a call center down in Riverwoods Mall, and I was walking home, and I had this realization that I couldn't do it, that I don't want to be with him. He wasn't my answer, and she deserved more. And I can't explain where that thought came from. My mom had been trying to convince me, my dad had been trying to convince me, and I was going to figure this out. And all of a sudden, it was just not my plan anymore. I had at the time been going to LDS Social Services at the request of my mom. Their goal is to help people figure out what they're going to do, contrary to popular belief. That's what they were made for. But they also help birth moms find adoptive families. And so within a week, within days, we looked up different couples online, and my mom looked at some couples and I looked at some couples, and there was one couple that was on both of our lists, and two couples actually, and I emailed them both. And the first question I asked was, how would you feel if I named her? And one couple said, well, we can discuss it. And the other couple said, would you please, because we can't agree on a name. The next day I met them and I asked them to be her mom. And yeah, and that's how Sarah and Eric came into our life. So within a week, I was a mom to finding a couple, finding this connection, and the way that she has blessed my life continually is just, it was divine intervention. There's no other way.
How old is Liberty now?
She is 14.
14. And do you have any kind of relationship with that family and the child?
We see them all the time.
Okay.
All the time.
So was it an open adoption that allowed you kind of have?
Yeah, in fact, we broke all the rules. They told me to not call Sarah for 24 hours after I had the baby, and it was a C-section, so I had 4 days in the hospital with Liberty. I called her the second they rolled me back into surgery. They told her to not let me come see the baby for 6 months to let them acclimate. I was over there within 2 weeks because it worked for us. We had an open adoption. As hard as it was, I respected her role as a mom. And I called before I went over. She invited me over to family stuff. I respected their boundaries. But it was the hardest thing that I've ever had to do.
Mm-hmm. After she was born, were you able to stay clean?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No, my dealer came to the hospital and started right back down that path.
It's tough.
The boyfriend went to the Marines for a little while and then came back because he tested dirty, so he couldn't stay. And for the next 2 years, it was a roller coaster of drugs and boys and jobs and places to live. And I think I was on probation at one point. I don't remember, but I think that's how I ended up doing a court-ordered therapy. Yeah, I had Liberty when I was 19, and until I was 20 and a half was just chaos. I didn't have a future. I didn't know where I was going, what I was going to do. Meth takes you so fast. I still didn't drink or smoke or anything else. And then when I was almost 20, I was 20. The January before my 21st birthday, I learned I was pregnant again. And so I was trying to hide it from my mom. I told my mom I was sober. I did tell her eventually that I was using drugs. I remember how scared she was that I was going to tell her I was pregnant again. But no, I was just on meth. And I thought that was going to be my turning page. It wasn't. It was
so you had baby number 2. Who was the dad of that?
Same dad.
Okay. Well, there's some consistency.
There's some consistency. Same dad. I found out I was pregnant in January. Same dad, same guy. And, but I couldn't get sober this time.
Okay.
The first person I told was Liberty's mom. And I was about 3 or 4 months pregnant. And I called her and I said, how would you like to expand your family? And Sarah had been sitting in church one day with this feeling of, I have another baby. I need to start putting out feelers for where this baby is. And she had met a couple of other birth parents looking to adopt, and nothing felt right. And as soon as I called her, she knew. That's how God works in our life. He doesn't really whisper, he yells. He's just like, all right, come on. And so when I told her, how would you like to expand your family? I'm pregnant again. I haven't been to a doctor yet, and I'm on meth. And bless her heart, she said, I think the first thing we need to do is take you to a doctor, make sure you're okay. So we did. We learned that it was another girl. It was different with my second because she was never mine. The second I knew I was pregnant, she was Sarah's.
Okay.
I just knew that from the very beginning. Especially because I couldn't get pregnant. My life at that point was just out of control. Or I couldn't get sober, sorry. And when I was about 7 months pregnant and I was going to this therapy place, they wanted to do a drug test on me. And I came up with all sorts of stupid excuses of why I couldn't do a drug test. They didn't buy any of them. So they called my probation officer, and then they called me. And they said, hey, look, we have an opportunity for you. We have this reality TV show who want to sponsor you. I kid you not. So I met these producers and DJ AM, and they paid for me to go to rehab at 7 months pregnant, which I thank God every day because my daughter was born healthy and okay and at a good weight, and she's thriving, and I thank God every day because I've seen them. You've seen them. The babies that are born on drugs, and now I want to make it my life mission to make it illegal. And so I went to rehab, 7 months pregnant, gave birth to her. While I was there, another C-section. Sarah took her home. Liberty named her. We were trying to figure out what to name her. I wanted Sarah to have a chance. But Liberty, at 2 years old, pointed to an ultrasound picture on the fridge and said, "That's baby sister Hannah." And we got Hannah. So the two of them were with Sarah and Eric. And I graduated that rehab, relapsed, went to Arizona, did the program a second time, came home, relapsed. And in January, again, apparently everything happens in January, my mom finally had enough. And she told me that she couldn't watch me kill myself anymore. And she called the cops. And I was arrested and charged with felony of possession. And then I had a court date October 1st of 2010. Liberty was born October 4th, 2007. Hannah was born September 28th of 2009. Hannah had just turned 1, and it was right between their birthday on October 1st is my sobriety date. I had court that day. I had used the day prior to that. They wanted to drug test me at the courthouse, and by the mercy of God, it came clean. But I was so scared of going to jail, of losing my mom, of losing any possibility that I had of a future. And I was done. I also left the boy about a year prior to this. He has never met Hannah. He knew Liberty for 2 years. He met Hannah in the hospital. Then he moved to Arizona. While I was in rehab, I learned that he had been cheating on me, which isn't new. We did it to each other all the time. We were in a horribly abusive relationship. And I was just done. Like, again, it was one of those divine interventions where God just said, "You're not figuring this out, so I'm just going to do it for you." And I didn't need to call him again. I didn't need his approval. I didn't need that interaction. I was ready to move on. So he was gone. I had court. They allowed me to start drug court and do a plea in abeyance. Justice Jimenez was my judge for most of it. And my antidepressant kept coming up as a false positive. Mm-hmm. But my life was getting back on track. I had a job. They were helping me get through school. And he kept believing in me over and over and over and over again until finally I had to just go off all of my meds. But I still am in contact with him, and he knows I went to law school and graduated, which is really cool. The statistics for getting sober off of meth is slim to none. I think it's like maybe 2%
right.
of the population. It just doesn't happen. On top of that, my addiction was because of an eating disorder, which you just don't ever overcome. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't wish an eating disorder on my worst enemy. I believe you can overcome an addiction. I don't. I think eating disorder is 1,000 times worse. And by the grace of God, I was able to rebuild the relationship I had with my mom. And
well, this is the best part, and that's where we want to go. So your sobriety date was that October 1st, 2010.
Yep. And
so you've been clean and sober since?
Yep.
That's amazing. And so you were able to get yourself through school?
Yep. And I built a relationship with Sarah and Eric and got to know my girls, and they know me and they know my story.
And then when did you get married again?
2013.
Okay.
So I told my husband about my past, about my addiction. But apparently, and I still had a lot of addict mentalities. The sneakiness and the minimalizing and the manipulation, and I dated all of the bad guys. And my husband was so good for me. I hate him all the time because he doesn't play the games.
Okay.
He never has. And so we fought all the time. But he's made me see myself and grow and be able to let go of a lot of that. But apparently I told him I had been sober longer than I had. I don't remember, but he was surprised.
Those little white lies we tell to our significant others, for sure.
Yeah. We met, I was sort of going back to church at the time. I had just quit my job as a cocktail waitress. I was sober, but I was hanging out with like this biker gang at these bars all the time, and I still didn't drink, but I was a cocktail waitress, and like it still wasn't a good life, right? And I was just kind of like, I don't want to do this anymore, and so I dumped all the guys, and I started going back to church I had great roommates who all went to the same singles ward, and that's where my husband went. And so there was like this group of friends that all hung out together, and that's how I met him. And he was not my type. He was not, the bad boy. He worked at a bank. Like, I remember the first time I saw him, he was like in a collared shirt. I was like, I'm used to guys in leather jackets, right? Like, but he was responsible and mature, and he owned a house, and he was far out of my league, but at the same time, he had also just gotten divorced, and he was tired of like the good Mormon girls. And I had tattoos, and I still drank coffee. I never gave up coffee. And we just kind of clicked and hit it off, and I think we were the missing piece in each other's puzzles. And we got married a year later.
And then how far into your marriage did you finish school and go to law school?
So I was still getting my associate's degree when we got married. I was getting my associate's degree at Slick because at that point any education was better than nothing. And so I was getting my associates, and then immediately from there I applied to the U to do the social work program, and then I worked at DCFS as a caseworker for 3 years. And while I was there, I realized I didn't like the system. I don't think birth moms should have all the rights they do, and that's coming from my own experience. I don't think the fact that we're capable of getting pregnant or impregnating gives someone the right to be a parent and make these choices for their kids. I think that's a very controversial way of thinking. I don't think a lot of people would necessarily agree with
Very
me.
controversial. And it's tough, but you've lived through it.
But I've lived through it, yeah.
And I've seen it. I mean, I dealt with DCFS a lot. I represent these parents, and I agree. Like, choices come with consequences, and that means that you lose your ability or your constitutional right to parent.
Yes, the first time, not the 15th.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And, you're just a story of hope.
I hope so. That's my goal.
I think if you could give, somebody listening, they're like struggling with a drug addiction or any kind of addiction, what would be your advice of hope to them?
This isn't who you're supposed to be. I think that's what got me out of it, is I knew my future was supposed to be different.
Right.
I wasn't supposed to be a drug addict. I found connections outside of that I was able to grasp onto, and I knew that I could hopefully eventually use this to strengthen my life. And be a hope for other people. But yeah, it doesn't have to be your life. I think a lot of people start, at least when I was in my addiction, I didn't feel like I was worth being sober. I didn't feel like I deserved it. And that's just not true. For anybody.
Yeah. I think that also, your story, and now you have more children.
Yep. I have a son who is 8, a daughter who is 5, and Sarah actually has 2 biological children, an 8 and a 5-year-old. So at any given point, one of us will have all 6 kids.
Oh my gosh.
We just incorporated them into our family.
That's amazing. And here you are now working at Coil Law and helping
awesome.
other families through tough times.
I hope so. I want to help kids. I want to give them a voice. That's my goal.
Yeah. I just think you're just because I know a lot of people, especially when they're going through addictions and stuff, eventually they get to the point that their life's not worth it or they're not worth it. But I guess if we can get anything from this is that the person you are right now is not the person you're supposed to be.
No.
And it's all about standing in your own 2 feet and shining the light that you have. We're all different. We're all
Absolutely.
unique. And we all have our challenges. But believing you are worthy of happiness, you are worthy of being that person that you know you can be. And there are challenges to that because mental health is a real thing. Sometimes our brain tells us completely opposite of what it should tell us. Yep. But through therapy, through the right medications, through, friendships, relationships, you're able to overcome that. Just like you said, overcome the demons.
Yeah, and I honestly don't think it was until I had kids that I could finally see my worthiness. Because my beautiful kids who did nothing except scream at me all day long were worth every second of my time and my love. And it was at that moment when I realized that I had the exact same ability I was worth just as much, just for being here.
Right. And that's what we say every day. When we say the words, no one dies from divorce, it's because we know that happiness comes within, that it's a choice that we make. And I say this a lot with opportunity, but opportunity is just not about luck. It's about standing in your place and creating and being able to create the opportunity around you. And I know that that's true. Absolutely. It's taking the circumstances you're in, whatever they are, and making decisions that are going to open windows and doors and give you these places that you can walk through. And that's what you did, Meg.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I appreciate being here, all of it.
Well, we absolutely adore you. And this story is just another level of hope. That if you're out there and you're feeling like you have nowhere to go, this is living proof that you have somewhere to go and you have some place to be, and it's possible.
Absolutely. If I can do it, anyone can.
Absolutely. Thanks, Meg, for being here. That's another episode of No One Dies from Divorce. Absolutely raw and real, and I adore you. Thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you.
Till next week. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed, please subscribe, follow, and share. I'd love to hear your questions and feedback. You can contact me at community@jillcoyle.com. See you next time. I am an attorney, but I am not your attorney. Any advice given on the podcast is general and shall not be construed